We need to talk about Donald Trump's Justice Department. Trump's former personal attorney, Todd Blanche, is currently running the department in an acting capacity. But now Trump wants to fully appoint him as Attorney General. Blanche took the job from Pam Bondi after Trump fired her, it seemed, for not putting enough of his political enemies on trial. Since taking over, Blanche has managed to get an indictment of James Comey in the infamous seashells on the beach case, moved to undo the final convictions from January 6th, rolled back gun regulations, pursued investigations into Trump's unsupported claims of election fraud, and accused the Biden administration of weaponizing the justice system against conservatives. This week, Blanche made headlines for actually backing down on Trump's so-called anti-weaponization fund worth $1.776 billion, saying in word but not in official writing that the fund would not be happening. But Trump might not be on the same page, it seems. Yesterday, the president said he wasn't sure whether it was dead or on hold and added that he loved the fund. Today, Democrats in the Senate tried to officially block the fund from happening, but Republicans voted that down. Meanwhile, the DOJ has reached a plea deal with one of Trump's officials from his first term. Former National Security Advisor John Bolton has agreed to plead guilty to one count of retaining classified information. That's according to two people familiar with the matter. The deal would include up to 60 months in jail and a fine of more than $2 million. With that, I'm going to bring in our leadoff panel, Peter Baker, chief White House correspondent for the New York Times, David Drucker, senior writer at The Dispatch, and former U.S. Attorney Joyce Vance, who spent 25 years as a federal prosecutor. Great to see all of you tonight. Joyce, based on what we've seen so far from Blanche, what would you expect from him and this Justice Department if he is in fact confirmed for the long term?
Well, there's no way to sugarcoat it, Antonia. This is someone who's fully willing to carry out the president's agenda. And when you think about it, the difference between this administration and the first Trump administration is that Jeff Sessions, as Attorney General, was surrounded by people who insisted that he adhere to some of the norms. His Deputy Attorney General did that. In this case, when Todd Blanche was the Deputy Attorney General, he did not insist that Pam Bondi adhere to norms. Instead, he fully enabled the corruption of the Justice Department. There's no reason to expect anything other than more of the same.
Peter, I want to get your thoughts on how Blanche may maneuver with what may be left of the idea of this fund at this point. He's said that it's not happening, but would not put that officially in writing as Democrats had requested. Then, of course, Trump is continuing to flirt with this. And then we also know just from the reporting that's been building for months that they have been looking at routes to give restitution of some kind to January 6ers and others who feel that they were wronged by the Biden administration in the past. So what are you watching for? And what do you think are the likely sort of creative routes Blanche and others may go in order to get money into the hands of some of these people who were set to benefit from that $1.776 billion fund?
Yeah, I think one thing we've learned in two Trump terms is that things that are dead are not really dead just because they're in the coffin. He has ways of coming back to things that we thought he backed off on. Remember, he tried to get Greenland in the first term, then didn't get anywhere. Suddenly he comes back in the second term. When he doesn't get anywhere in the second term, he comes back later in the second term. And I think that we can understand why there would be some hesitation to accept an oral commitment that this is dead without something in writing making that very clear. Now, there are courts that are involved in this, one here in the local area of Washington, one down in Florida, and Joyce knows this better than I do, and it's possible one of them may require something in writing that will clarify the future and commitments that they're making here. But in the meantime, it's not surprising that lawmakers would be dubious. He has, in fact, as you say, been trying to find ways to get money to these, allies of his who believe that they were mistreated in some way. He pardoned every single one of the people who stormed the Capitol or gave them clemency. And I think that every time an aide said, no, he won't do that, he went ahead and did that. Remember, but before that pardon, there were people all the way up to J.D. Vance, the vice president coming in of the United States, saying, oh, no, he won't actually pardon the people who were the most violent people. He might pardon the people who were nonviolent. And it turns out they were wrong. So this is why people don't trust people around Trump to be able to speak for him unless there's something in writing.
David, we have Bill Pulte here, too, and it seems like Republicans have, or the Trump administration, the White House, they've accepted that he probably would not be able to get through the confirmation process, but he's still going to have months ahead as, you know, basically the acting lead head of 18 different intelligence agencies. And Trump had some interesting remarks that I think gave us a hint of what's to come. I want you to take a listen.
He's not going to be permanent because, you know, I don't think he'd want to be permanent. But he's a very smart guy, and he may find out some things about the rigged elections, et cetera, et cetera.
David, what's he telling us is coming there?
Yeah, I think what he's telling us is that he's going to keep Bill Pulte in that position for as long as he finds tenable, that he likes the idea of having somebody in there that's going to do what he wants them to do with the position. And let's not forget, you know, ODNI, on the one hand, a lot of Republican intelligence hawks believe that the position has outlived its usefulness, created in the aftermath of 9/11. It's a coordinating and management position, and both Tulsi Gabbard and now Bill Pulte are going to use it, you know, at the behest of the president to go look for things that A, aren't there, and B, aren't really the purpose of the position. But I think that Trump would be perfectly happy to have him confirmed as the permanent ODNI, if not for the fact that you're not going to get enough support from Senate Republicans to do it.
Joyce, I want you to expand on what's at stake here with someone like Bill Pulte leading 18 different intelligence agencies, no background in intelligence whatsoever. A person who has already used the housing agency that he is still going to be running while he takes on this other massive job to try to settle the president's scores. You know, so much of the score settling story in this administration is focused just on the DOJ and FBI, and often rightfully so. But what does it tell you to see that those kinds of patterns of behavior, those focuses brought into a space as important as the intelligence apparatus in this country?
Well, Bill Pulte has been phenomenally successful at the only thing that matters for someone who wants a job in this administration, and that's demonstrating loyalty to Donald Trump and executing his revenge agenda. Because it's Pulte who goes into the mortgage records with the access that he has at Fannie and Freddie and comes out with this information that ultimately leads to the indictment of Letitia James, the now dismissed indictment, and gives Trump the rationale to fire Lisa Cook, the first Black woman to become a governor at the Fed. I mean, this is what Bill Pulte is good at. Now imagine what that looks like in the intelligence community with access to the IC's level of information. You know, where this all comes to a head is with the FISA statute needing to be re-upped. FISA is self-limiting. Congress has to reapprove it every set number of years. And there are legitimate concerns that Section 702, which allows collection of intelligence from foreign terrorism targets, and sometimes involves incidental collection of information about Americans who have telephonic or email communications with these folks, that sort of information is something that Pulte would be able to take a look at. So this comment that Trump makes publicly today, the sort of quiet part out loud, where he talks about finding evidence of rigged elections, I think that's not even the worst of it. The worst of it is forward-looking and what they might gin up together to further damage the process in the upcoming midterms and in 2028 with Pulte in this particular position.
Peter, why at a time when there are so many legitimate crises ahead of the American people, first, chief among them, of course, just the financial pressure that so many Americans are feeling. Now we have this news of the screw worm potentially causing immense havoc and devastation for ranchers in Texas and elsewhere. Beef prices potentially to rise at a time when they're already expensive, and cattle's at historic lows here. I mean, there are real problems for this president to focus on to bring new ideas and people into the fold and put them to task. But why are these political projects still at a time when his polling is the way that it is? People are basically screaming from the rooftops about what it is that they need and they're angry about, that this still seems to be what he wakes up every day, whether, I guess maybe it's the ballroom. But then number two is it is the score settling, it is the personal projects, and it's kind of warping the bureaucracy in ways that don't seem to serve your average American.
Yeah, I'm reminded that Susie Wiles, the White House chief of staff, told Chris Whipple in Vanity Fair last year that she had an agreement with President Trump that after the first 90 days, the score settling would be over, get it out of the way and then move on to things that the American public cares about. Well, obviously, it's been a lot longer than 90 days. And I think that what you see here is that the priority he has is his anger and grievance over the way he feels like he was mistreated, his desire to take revenge against those he believes were his tormentors, and his desire to, put his name on history, in effect. And by putting his name on buildings and on the currency and on, national park tickets and so on and so forth, these monuments and arches and so forth, it's his way of achieving a sort of immortality, right? Lately, he's talked about whether he might even go to heaven. Clearly, as a man who just a couple of weeks, less than 2 weeks, turns 80 years old, like a lot of people at that stage in life, he seemed to be thinking about what he will be remembered for. And one thing he seems determined to do is to leave his mark on the city of Washington in a way that he is remembered for a long time to come.